Among all the new long travel 29er offerings on the market, does the Evo Wreckoning still have what it takes to be at the top of its field? Hey guys, Josh with Daily Mountain Bike Rider here, and today I'm going to do a bike review and check on my new 2018 Evo Wreckoning. And I just want to talk with you about why I think this bike is still at the top of its game in the long travel 29er category, even though there's a bunch of new bikes out there. Now, before we talk about how the bike rides, let me tell you a little bit about this bike that I got. This is, like I said, the 2018 Evo Wreckoning, and this comes in the GX build. Now, if you're not familiar with Evo, they mainly sell frames, and so this frame is the same Wreckoning frame that they've sold for the last 2 years, except this one is built up with Evo's, what they call the GX build. Some notable features on this: it rolls on Raceface Effect R30 rims. That's got a 30mm internal width. On that, we have some Maxxis tires, a DHF up front, and a DHR2, and a standard 29 by 2.3 measurements. Kind of moving up from there, up at the fork, we have the RockShox Lyric. This is the RCT3, which is one of the best ones they sell. Backwards, we've got the RockShox Monarch Plus, which is 160mm of travel in the rear and 160mm of travel on the fork. Moving on to the drivetrain, we've got the SRAM Jeagle EX drivetrain. Pretty standard with the cassette, the derailleur, and the chain. And then up front, we've got a Travative, and that's just a descendant crank. Up from there, we've got SRAM guide brakes, along with a SRAM reverb seat post with a new 1x dropper, which is very nice, and some Raceface stem and bars, and last but not least, a WTV Volt Pro saddle. So with this build, it comes in at about $5,300 plus tax, which is not cheap in any sense of the word, but the more I think about it, I actually think this is a pretty good build for the price. Now, the real question you're wondering, how does this bike ride? Well, I've actually ridden this bike 2 times before I bought this bike. One was a demo from a local shop here called Fanatic, which was almost a brand new Wreckoning that I loved. And then another one was from the Evo demo themselves, and that one had been through the ringers, and both times I had a great time on this bike. And after owning it, I think there are 3 main characteristics that come on top of all the other long travel 29ers out there. And the first is the climbing position. Now, if you look at this bike, the seat tube really looks like it's at a radically slack angle, but amazingly enough and surprisingly, when you jump on there and start pedaling, it's like the perfect position. Your weight is over the back wheel and the front wheel perfectly, where you don't feel like you're always gonna wheelie, and you feel like you get the best pedal transfer. I went out with some friends, they didn't believe me because they thought it looked ridiculous, and they jumped on it and they couldn't believe how well the bike climbed. Second thing I saw about the Wreckoning is, even though 1x drivetrains and all this new technology makes bikes very, very quiet, this bike is extremely quiet. I'm talking everywhere you go, busting down downhills, just messing around in a parking lot, you almost don't hear the bike except for the rear hub, and it is so quiet and smooth, and I think it's a testament to how well the suspension works. And that's my third perk, is this bike rides like no bike I've felt before. It is the perfect combination of being planted and stable where you need it, and then right when you push into that suspension to go off a bump or just go around a berm perfectly, that's where it comes alive and it's active and playful. It's a mix that I haven't felt in too many bikes before, and it's exactly why I bought this bike. Is because sometimes I do cross-country trails, sometimes I'm doing enduro, and I do lift access as well, and I wanted a one bike that did it all and did it all pretty dang well, and this bike definitely stands above the rest. But along with that, there are some things I don't like. First up is, though the frame is all carbon, this bike is in no way light. It's still pretty heavy. I have a size medium, I have some pretty light Chester pedals on there, and it still comes in at just about 31.5 pounds. Which, I'm not a weight weenie, I don't care too much, but with carbon you would think you would be right at or under that 30-pound point. Now, the second thing I didn't like about this, it's a small thing, but I think it's important, and that's the spec on this build. A lot of this, including the suspension and the drivetrain, are, I think, perfectly spec'd for the bike, but I think the SRAM guides aren't the best brakes on the market. I have had a ton of squeal after just one ride and working diligently to brake in those pads well. As well, the RockShox reverb, I love that it has the 1x remote, but as we all know who have a reverb, when they work great, they work great. but too often they fail or stuff goes wrong with them. So there's just a couple things on the bike that I feel like I'm gonna need to upgrade, including just a little bit bigger front tire to the 2.5 wide trail from Maxxis. And then there's the third thing I don't like, and this is probably the most notable thing about the Evil Wreckoning, and that is the rear suspension. Now, I love the rear suspension. I love the Delta design. It's a single pivot design that isn't that complex, but man, it works so well to climb and descend well. But it has this RockShox Monarch to Bon Air Plus on it, and I have 2 bands in there. That's what I normally run on these, and I realized I set my SIG to 30%, went out on the trail, and I was quickly blowing through all my travel. So I would bottom out the rear shock, and it wasn't that harsh, but I'm finding the thing I don't like is I'm gonna have to put probably 4 or 5 volume reducing bands in the back just to get it so I can keep my SIG at 30, where it's nice and plush and playful, and not compress all the suspension right away. So not a big issue, but just not something you want to do right away when you've bought a nice, really expensive bike. So those are just a couple of the highlights and the lowlights of the Evil Wreckoning I found. But the one thing I will say to wrap up this video, and I'm sure you've heard it before, and if you look at other Evil reviews, you're going to hear it again, and that's that there is something special about these bikes that really makes them stand above the rest. And I attribute it to 2 main factors. The first is that rear Delta Link suspension design. It makes it so the bike is very supple when you need it to, and yet just plows at other times. And the second thing is this overbuilt carbon frame that Evil has on all of their bikes. Those 2 characteristics make something magical that gives you stability when you need it, and then just playfulness and fun when you want it. Now, no matter how you feel about Evil bikes or the Evil Wreckoning, here's the one thing I encourage you to do. Go out and demo one again. I always say don't just make a decision about a bike because you've rid it one time. Go ride it again, try it out, and see what you think for yourself. And my hope is that you see what I believe and that this is truly the best long travel 29er on the market today. All right, that's it from me, Josh from Daily Mountain Bike Rider. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you give this video a like if you liked what you saw, and please subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the bikes reviews I will do, which there are many more coming, especially in this long travel 29er category. All right, that's it. You know what time it is. Don't watch too much YouTube. Don't stay on the computer for too long, but go outside and go ride your bike. And while you're at it, remember to do that every single day so you can get better every single day.